What is going on, YouTube? Thank you so much for attending the live Q&A. Once again, Roid Sage. I believe Adam will be with us here shortly. I'm going to go ahead and play the intro just to give him a little bit more time, and then we'll get right to your questions. We have some on the last video from last week. I'm going to go on to that one to make sure we capture those. And then I have a couple from Instagram. And of course, as always, as questions come in live, we'll answer those, make sure that we can get you the solutions you need, or at least try to, the best we can. Again, this show is all about trying to provide as many questions or answers. I always say this every single time, every answer to your questions as possible. And we do have a good record of doing that. One thing I will add, it came apparent to me that the links in the description were broken. And so the past couple of videos, I had a couple of people reach out and say, hey, the free resources aren't working. The links aren't working. So I made sure to create a new landing page for all of the free resources. And instead of having separate landing pages for all of them, I just put it into one package. So there's a free resource package. And essentially you just go to a page, you click download, you get free resources. There's a dosing guide in there as far as like how to dose your gear depending on the concentrations and the desired dose per the amount of days you're injecting per week. It'll give you very clear and concise ideas on how to do that. And then it will be in there as well, a training program called Combat Body. I made this a while ago with Adam. And then there is a nutritional guide in there, not necessarily a how-to diet or necessarily a step-by-step dieting book, but more so actually a really thorough how to create your own diet. I think that's really the best way to put it, especially for beginners more than anything. And then there's now a new resource, which I think a lot of people will really benefit from because I put hundreds of hours into this one. And I think it's really, really important that a lot of people might actually invest in reading this. It's called the Post-Show Rebound Guide. And I truly, when I say I put a lot of time into this one and effort, there was a lot of time and effort put into this. If you go to that link and download that folder right now, you'll have access to this. And I just actually finished making it, and it is a thoroughly good resource. And I highly suggest that you might take some time to read it and actually just even let me know what you think. But I'm going to share it on my screen and kind of walk through it because I'm damn proud of it. And I might as well talk about what we got going on here. Adam just joined, so we'll pop him in stage. What's up, Adam?
Hey, man, what's up?
Not too much. So anyways, this is the post-show rebound guide. I think it's worth a good read. It talks about a lot of the science behind why we want to sort of gradually gain weight, how to do that, what is happening at a cellular level, and then a little bit about pharmacology as well. Really good read, honestly. Something worth investing some time into if you're especially post-show right now. But anywho, sorry, Adam, I was just doing some maintenance in terms of letting people know that the links are working again because apparently they weren't working in the last video. Okay. But now we're all good to go. So we're all good to go. So how's it going, man?
Good, man. Good. I think we all recently, excuse me, have just been fucking getting food poison. I mean, last Saturday, or was it today? Adam and I had one of those fucking chicken shakes. You know, the one that they have at the gym. Had a blueberry one, shit, a strawberry one, literally coming out both ends, and yeah, you got poisoned by Taco Bell.
Yeah,
yeah, it was not fun. So yeah, recovering.
Are you got sick too? I didn't.
No, as bad as Cat. Cat was like, Cat got really fucked up. I was like a bit. I was just, you know, having it just runny guts, I guess, for the most part. I didn't really throw up much, which I think mine was just maybe a bit less off than hers, to be honest. I think they've just been sitting there because we tried just a random little gym that was like in the area, and we're just like, oh, we'll try these chicken shakes. You know, some people said it was good, and yeah, it was okay. But at the end, there was like a strong chicken aftertaste, which in hindsight probably meant it was sitting there in the fridge for quite some time, and yeah, it didn't go well.
Oh man, and that got you both sick.
Yeah, Cat was way worse than I. Cat was like throwing up for like 24 hours.
Yeah, dude, that's honestly the thought. I just got over mine, so that makes me feel absurdly sick. But the thought of just drinking chicken is something else. And then let alone
Yeah, I'm
putting it
never doing
into
it
a
again.
fridge. Because I've seen those at like the gym, you know, and putting them into a fridge, and like who knows how long they've been there, because I'm sure they're not like a hot commodity.
Yeah, that was just really retarded of us. So I was like, oh, the chicken shakes, yeah, they're fresh. I'll just grab two. And also, to be fair, they had no protein shakes at the gym. It was just the chicken shakes. I was like, okay, fuck it. Yeah, didn't go well.
I mean, hey, at least you got 60 grams of protein for the moment, at least.
Yeah, temporarily, and then fucking spewed it out.
Yeah, that's what happened was, so I have a pretty a resilient gut. I can eat a lot of shit and get away with it. I'm very known to eat shitty chicken, you know, like chicken that probably smells bad, and I'll eat it just to be like, all right, cool, let's test this thing out.
Yeah,
But I think most people can get away with chicken, you know. I don't think,
yeah.
unless it's in a shake, it's been in fucking Thailand heat for God knows how long. And but anyways, so we go to Taco Bell, and we eat it. I enjoy it. I had a great time. Immediately when we got home, Hana was like, I don't feel good. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, sounds good. Just, you know, do your thing. She went and took a nap for like 2 hours, woke up immediately, like started projectile vomiting. Like, not just like a little bit, but like, oh, like screaming into the toilet. Right. And I was like, what is going on? Because I felt like nothing at all. So I was like kind of concerned. I was like, let's just go to the hospital, figure out what's wrong, and see what's up. Because I thought like she was in so much pain, maybe she had like appendicitis or something, and had, because that happened to me back in the day, and it was awful, and I had to get surgery. And it was very similar. It was like really painful. I felt like I had to vomit. My stools were off. And so we went to the hospital, did an ultrasound, got IVs and stuff like that to hydrate her. She was puking at the hospital. It was hilarious. I mean, for me, it was funny, not her. But, and then turns out she was just, yeah, she had food poisoning. And then this is like 2 days after the fact. I'm like, wow, that's wild. You know, that was crazy. Kind of laughing about it, doing my thing, training, eating. And then literally it took 2 days later, that's when it hit me. I don't know like what happened that had taken so long. Yeah. But it was everything that she went through. And it was just projectile vomiting, like 3 days of just like not being able to hold any food in. Today's the first day where I woke up and I was like, oh, thank God. Like I can feel normal. I had, you know, a bowl of yogurt first thing in the morning just to be safe so I don't vomit anything back up. And I was like, thank God, like this feels fine. Yesterday, I thought I'd try my hand at the gym, and it was just like, it was the most miserable session I've had trying to train chest and back. And it was just like, it's like every set I'd literally run to the toilet, evacuate myself, and then go back and do another set. And then by the end of it, I was like just trying to drink water. And I think every ounce of water I was drinking was just going out the back ends, like right after I drank it. So it was just like an immediate exchange. Really awful. I think the moral of the story is, though, if it sounds suspicious, you probably shouldn't eat it in Thailand, which is, you know, ideally Taco Bell, because who eats Taco Bell in a country like this? And then and then chicken shakes for sure, man. It's not a good move.
Fuck that. The fact that it manifested 2 days later reminds me. I remember in South Africa when I was there ages ago. There was basically bacteria which basically grew in your gut microbiome and then manifested itself later. So it could have been something like that. That
it might have been
potentially you were resistant to it, and it just developed and got worse and worse and worse until eventually you just had to throw up again.
Yeah,
that's what I would assume. Yeah, if you, I mean, obviously hindsight is 2020, but if you'd like smash some antibiotics, maybe, but
that's what I was thinking. Actually, yeah. I the thing is like it happened after I had eaten yogurt too, and it's obviously like a source of probiotics. So I had figured that maybe I allowed some of those, you know, little bacteria to flourish a little bit too much, and then they sort of took over and just caused havoc. What was really helpful though, and I maybe off label recommend this to people, is taking a dopamine agonist. I can't remember which one I took. It was Dexa. I can't remember at the moment. It was.
You talk about like Cava Premi, Prepexol, anything like
No,
that?
I cannot remember it for the life of me. There is a
The typical prolactin controls.
no. I'm so sorry, man. I'm totally forgetting this one. There's like
It's all good.
certain dopamine agonists deal with like, well, all of them deal with gastric motility, but also like working in hand with the neuropod cells in the gut, and they simmer down your upset stomach essentially, right? And
Okay.
your the nausea you can kind of feel like internally in your stomach. I don't know if you've had that feeling where it's like wishy-washy in your stomach. And it helps tremendously, and that certainly like I mean, I think that honestly kept me on my feet and functioning for most of the days. 100%. So that was something interesting that I went through. But anyways, outside of being sick and all that, there's actually a really cool question that I wanted to pull up right off the jump, because we're both trying a new experiment, at least new for me, with hair stuff, and I wanted to have an opportunity to talk about that somewhere so we can put it on record and at least have people hear how it's going as an experimental side of things. And I think we're probably doing the same thing. But Captain Flint asks, can I get big and keep my hair using only testosterone, or should I consider other compounds? Just seems test solo or nandrolone solo is the only thing okay on hair. RDQ could be okay on hair. So I'll answer the question, and then, or we can answer the question, then we'll kind of go into a little bit deeper about what we're doing. I think both myself and Adam are using Test and EQ now at this point. And for myself, I think, and I think Adam as well, Test and Mastron seem to not cause too much deleterious effects to the hairline. Compare it to Test and Primobolan, though, that seems to be much worse on the hairline. I would say that, in fact, though, testosterone doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be safer on the hairline, because you're actually converting your testosterone into dihydrotestosterone, not just Mastron or Primobolan, but real biologically equivalent dihydrotestosterone, which will act and exert a specific effect at a cellular level on the nucleus of a cell, which is meant to be, hair miniaturization, or follicle miniaturization, and all the other effects of DHT. So it doesn't necessarily mean that because testosterone isn't already a DHT derivative, it'll be safer on your hairline. That being said, I do use it, and it does seem to be less detrimental, but that's for me specifically. It doesn't mean that I'm not losing any hair. It just seems that I would lose less hair. But I think you can get big using testosterone, growth hormone, and insulin. I think me and Adam say this a lot. It's like the holy trifecta. It's like, if you can use testosterone, insulin, and growth hormone, you have two compounds that massively alter anabolism and then affect absolutely zero, or I should say potentiates zero hair loss. So
yeah, I agree with that. If you're not growing on testosterone, growth hormone, insulin, probably means something with diet, training, consistency is incorrect. But bring it back to your question specifically. We know that hair loss is androgenic alopecia, which means any androgens can potentially cause it, because what Kolton touched on of the conversion to DHT. But I will say, I do find that if you're using testosterone solely, or testosterone and equipoise in our case, at least so far, it seems to be easy, less deleterious on the hair. And also you can use things like topical, finasteride, topical dutasteride. So you get your 5-alpha reductase inhibitors. Typically people take them orally. Problem with that is, if you're familiar with them, they can cause like sexual dysfunction, it can affect libido, erection quality, and quite a host of other side effects. So taking them orally can be an issue for many, many people. So this is why typically we prefer topical administrations. You can also look at RU58841, okay, which can also help with retain your hair. And then for regrowth, minoxidil and microneedling work well. So if you were concerned about hair, personally, I would literally try what we're doing, which is a combination of insulin, growth hormone, testosterone. Maybe throw in the equipoise if you want, or when you need to titrate up the anabolics at a certain point, instead of increasing testosterone when you're starting to aromatize quite heavily, try to throw in a bit of equipoise. And then I would be using those, the topical 5-alpha reductase inhibitors. And yeah, dude, away you go. Nandrolone only, personally, I'm not a fan. Okay, for a couple of reasons. One, okay, there's a fair bit of neurotoxicity when it comes to, 19 or derivatives, and I think just for that reason alone, they're not worth it. I think you should limit your exposure to them. Also, in combination to that, many individuals who do nandrolone only find that things like motivation, sexual drive, etc., are much lower in comparison to testosterone, and it's just not a good quality of life. Are there individuals who enjoy it and work well off it? Yeah, absolutely. But for me, the sort of downregulation of, I guess, motivation or drive combined with the potential neurotoxicity just isn't worth it, which is why I steer more towards the testosterone only / equipoise route.
Yeah, and I think it's worth saying that the reason the reason I would say that testosterone is primarily a good use case scenario for someone with genetic hair loss is because we know the endpoints, and the endpoints are treatable, like you said. So it's like, if I'm using testosterone, I know it's going to convert into BHT. Therefore, I can stop the conversion and block the receptors at the scalp site, causing, effectively inhibition of hair loss. If I'm taking something like trenbolone and then I'm trying to do the same thing, I can't. Like I virtually can't. Let's say the trend causes some degree of hair loss. I can block the receptor, but the binding affinity is higher, and the metabolites, who knows what they're doing to the hair follicle. There's a lot of other things stacking against me in that route. So that's why we say like testosterone, insulin, and growth hormone, because you can effectively treat the endpoints with those three compounds very easily. High blood pressure, ARB, high heart rate, and ACE inhibitor. Like there's a lot of treatables there, but when it goes into the other compounds, it's where you start getting vague, and it's like, okay, maybe you can treat this. Maybe we know what's going on. The one thing I'm doing that I've not done before, and I picked this up from you, who picked it up from Todd, and then I've also adjusted it, is using infrequent dosing of oral minoxidil. So I believe you said you're doing, dutasteride. I believe you said you're doing every 10 days. Correct me if I'm wrong.
0.5 milligrams every 10 days. Yes, that's a good point. I forgot to mention that.
Okay. So you're doing 0.5 milligrams every 10 days. I'm doing 0.5 milligrams every 7 days. Yeah, every 7 days exactly, just because it's easier for me to remember. How has that been working for you so far, even though it's a completely new revelation that you're doing this? How is it working? Any notable effects? I think a lot of people are concerned about post-finasteride syndrome or something like it when they take dutasteride or any 5-alpha reductase inhibitor. Any effects like that so far? Anything?
It's really difficult because even when I was taking, a full dose of oral dutasteride, which I believe was like, I got prescribed like 0.5 milligrams every day, which was pretty wild when I did my own research, which is why I'm not saying don't trust your doctors, guys, but like also try to think a bit more laterally, get second opinions, do a bit of your own research. When I mean research, I don't mean like on a fucking forum. I mean like actual, like go look up what the actual half-life of dutasteride is, which I believe is 5 weeks. So you don't need to do very frequent dosing. So you can really play around with finding the dose. But I found that even when I was taking a full dosage, it wasn't like if I were to, quantify it, I would say maybe it was a 20 to 30% hit to sexual function for me specifically. So it wasn't massive, but it was noticeable enough so that I was like, this is sort of affecting my quality of life. I'm not a fan. So I, dialed it back significantly to actually a lie. I think I've been doing once every 7 days too, because the 10-day dosing was getting a bit weird. So I had an alarm on my phone, and then sometimes I forget. So I was like, fuck it, just every day on a Monday. But I've been finding that's been working quite well. Definitely, I was running it when I was using Primobolan, but that was like pissing in the wind. I don't think it was doing anything. But now switching over to just testosterone equipoise, I've noticed significantly less shedding. So for me, it seems that the solution is working well. I think what's been difficult for us here in Thailand is actually getting a topical dutasteride solution, because as we touched on last time, we've been fucking homebrewing it ourselves because we can't find anyone who sells or even ships in topical dutasteride. So we literally gain the dutasteride ourselves, mixing it with monoxide and alcohol solution and fucking using it. And so far so good. But I would say though, with me personally, I don't think I've completely halted the hair loss. Like there's still, I think, a slight bit of shedding, and that's simply because, as we're touching on, like you need to be taking relatively high doses of anabolics, which are converting to DHT, at least some of it, and that we're basically slowing it down, at least in my case.
Yeah, so I just started. And so let me back up, because I have a couple of questions about your experience too. And I'm sorry, people who don't care about hair, we're touching on this because we both have hair. But you said that you noticed a 20 to 30% reduction in, you said, overall sexual function, or just a preference towards having sex, or like what are you talking about necessarily?
Well, I noticed that like my libido was decreasing pretty much. Which is good for productivity, but but like libido was decreasing so much so that what other compounds done this to me? I mean, if you've like ever taken, I see Deca sometimes doesn't kill libido, just kills erection quality. But if you ever taken a compound when you have like no libido, or like your estradiol is like super crushed, that's sort of how I felt. And also like down-regulating mood a bit, in combination to like also like erection quality. I mean, I felt like, I mean, I haven't drunk in years and years and years and years, but like it's like when you drink alcohol, you
whiskey
can't get up. It's still, whiskey. There's a similar feeling like that. And I was like, the fuck. It wouldn't happen all the time, but it was like somewhat frequent. And then I was like, yeah, I don't know, it's worth it. And then I watched I watched a video from Todd and then I watched a video from Todd, and then I chatted to him on Instagram. And I think what his analogy was like, does a woman want a man with hair or a man with a dick that works?
Fair enough.
Like, fair point, Todd. Fair point. And fuck, that's sort of why I was like, okay, I need to, play more with the dosing. And also speaking to him too, and after realizing what the half-life was, I was like, this is fucking overkill. Like, you don't need to do, 0.5 milligrams daily. I think some people some doctors even recommending 1 milligram daily. And I was like, fuck, that's wild. Because I'm pretty sure dutasteride, if I'm correct, is also used to treat prostate issues. And in those higher dosages, that's typically what it's for. And I don't know why, but some doctors just recommend like the prostate dosages for hair loss. And I was just like, fuck, this is way too much. So I scaled it back until basically, now I'm sitting at just once a week.
Yeah. Oh man, I want to talk about so much. It's difficult. I don't want to make this whole podcast about hair loss, but so finasteride comes in a generic version, which is called ProScar, which is a 5 milligram tablet. And a lot of doctors will prescribe that, so you can break it into fourths and then take 1.5 or not 1.5, whatever that would break down to be. I don't exactly know. I'd have to do the math in my head, and I can't right now. But anyways, you get a 5 milligram tab. You're supposed to break it up into fourths and then administer the fourth every day. And it's cheaper than the 1 milligram tab, essentially, because that's not generic. And that one is used for prostate. Usually you'd take the 5 milligrams right in one hit. With dutasteride, I usually see it prescribed at 0.5 to 1 milligram doses, up to 2 milligram doses at the highest end. And that's in prostate use case scenarios, which blows my mind. The reason I am so curious at these differentiations is I was using finasteride when I started bodybuilding, again, before I really knew much at all. And I just knew that my hair started to fall out more just from taking showers and stuff. Like, it wasn't dramatic, but it was happening more, where I'd put my hand through my hair and then like pull hair out that wasn't coming out before, essentially. And so I started taking finasteride, and that's where I started to realize some of those sexual side effects. It wasn't necessarily like, for me, it was like probably like a 20% reduction in total sexual function, meaning my erection quality wasn't as good. So I'd lose like the ability. So like, let's just get really info adept here. If I would get an erection, it'd be like, 85% hard compared to 100%. Exactly. Yeah. So and that's not fun, even if it's a small percentage, it's still a big difference in your own mind. So and that was taking a milligram a day. And then I stopped taking it, basically regained function. And usually what I find is that HCG does a pretty good job at regaining any sort of sexual loss in function when someone takes finasteride. But then I swore off orals, right? And that's when I use topical dutasteride, only topical dutasteride, minoxidil, metformin, and then I always forget the name of it, the tretinoin. And that seemed to work for a long time. But like Adam said, we can't source it here in Thailand. So now I've sort of graduated into creating our own patented pharmaceutical blend of topical hair loss treatment, but also oral administration of dutasteride infrequently. And as Adam said, it's a very long half-life. You can take it very infrequently and still get really good effects from even clinical data there is out there. But I've recently seen on Gillette Health, I don't know if you're aware of that group. I sent you the podcast a while back, yes. But Gillette Health has two doctors. They're very avid into sort of biohacking, but their work for Merrick Health, but they're very avid into experimenting with themselves, but doing so responsibly, a little bit better than a bodybuilder, but a little bit worse than your primary care physician, essentially. And they both take finasteride. One of them, for instance, took finasteride and dutasteride every single day for 3 months and said that he was definitely had a lower libido, but he was completely fine. And the other one took finasteride every day and then applied dutasteride infrequently. And I was absolutely shocked that they were like willing to risk this for themselves. And it was interesting because they didn't necessarily have any outcomes that were negative outside of a slightly reduced libido, which I thought was key. And that was something I wanted you to see because it was an interesting experiment done. But essentially, like you said, I know we're talking about this way too much, but the dose effect of increasing the dose. So like, let's say we're using, 0.25 milligrams of finasteride, going up to 1.5 milligrams, unlike other drugs, isn't going to create a 400% or 500% increase in efficacy. It actually is like marginally lost as you increase the dose. And the same is true with dutasteride, right? So like when people take more, it's kind of like, well, you're not really getting much for doing that.
That's what,
like,
yeah, sorry. I was going to say, that's why that's quite curious, because when I was doing my research on it, I came across a bunch of studies where they were literally comparing the dosing of finasteride in terms of different dosages. And you're correct. It was a significant drop off, if I remember correctly, after, was it 1 milligram per day?
I think it was 1 milligram for finasteride.
I can't remember the exact number, but there was significant diminishing returns after a certain dosage where, I would surmise that you would get significantly more side effects with like, they were looking at basically what they were looking at is, if I correct, is like retained hair follicles or hair follicles lost, I believe, which how they would measure that, I would say there'd probably be a bit of inaccuracy there. But one thing I discovered was like, yes, there was definitely diminishing returns when it came to the dosing. And also secondly, that across maybe all the studies, that dutasteride had about a 20% better efficacy in retaining hair follicles. In combination with the longer half-life, 5 weeks, as opposed to, I think, 6 to 8 hours. So for me, it became like, well, and it's strange because also the doctors in at least Australia were really pushing finasteride. And I was like, hang on, like dutasteride has a longer half-life, so you can play around more with the dosing. It's also 20% more efficacious. Why the fuck were you mentioning, why are we pushing finasteride? And then I was found out that like in Asia, most Asian countries, dutasteride is like 80% used. I think in Japan, it's almost exclusively dutasteride. So I was like, well, this seems like the superior compound.
Yeah. And it just seems more refined too with how it's affecting the different 5-alpha reductase enzymes. Because I believe there's 3. I could be completely wrong here. It's not something I've delved deep into, but and dutasteride blocks 2 of them compared to finasteride's 1. Something of that nature.
Yes, I recall that too. It's quite a complex science when you get into it, but that's correct. If I remember it correctly, it did block, I guess, more pathways than finasteride did. But yeah, anyway, guys, we will try and move on because I feel like we could definitely talk about this all day. But yeah. Look into hair loss.
Jake Carter asks, what are your thoughts on transdermal BPC 157 and TB 500 products? I've actually personally never actually seen them for sale anywhere reputable. Do you think they would have any benefit or even be absorbable through transdermal administration, considering their molecular weight? It's a really good question. I don't even think they would be transdermal or have any absorption. For example, you don't see testosterone being a transdermal application because it's
Well, you
not
do get the gels, but
necessarily.
they shit.
What's that?
You do get those testosterone gels, but they shit.
Yeah, sorry, I meant growth hormone. Like you don't see
Yeah.
growth hormone transdermal administration at all like that. And I think something is a little bit different about peptides, and I could be wrong here, but it's maybe because of the protein structure itself being a bit more fragile, that I think maybe needs it to be in a different solution. There is intranasal formulations of growth hormone now, which are pretty cool, and testosterone and TB500 and BPC 157. But and transdermal sounds a little bit sketchy to me. And I have, for most people, like I'm not a book geek like a lot of people talk to me like I am. I do read a ton, but I'm not like in data every single day, so I don't catch new stuff. But I do have alerts on to specifically with like testosterone, gestanolone, BPC, like TB500, growth promotion, peptides, and things like that. So every week I get basically an update of all of the new published research on the specific, that has at least the specific keywords in the title that I put out there. I've not seen anything come out new regarding BPC 157 or TB500 or any peptide virtually with a transdermal application. So I don't know. I guess I wouldn't trust it just because I've not seen any clinical research on it. Maybe there's a mechanism that allows pharmacokinetically for transdermal application, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I mean, this is in layman's terms. I think this is more of a Kirk question, but I think besides the fragility of the compound, I also think the higher molecular weight, as you sort of touch on the question, means that you can't do a transdermal application. It's not something which is typically, I think, can be absorbed through the skin. Like, the reason why the nasal applications work is because you have capillaries inside of your nose, where, and the same thing if you did it sublingual tongue, which can be absorbed. And then I guess my question, well, follow-up question to your question would be, what are your thoughts in terms of transdermal applications? Do you think any benefits or even absorbable through transdermal administration, considering their molecular weight? So my answer would be no. And then my follow-up question would be, why would you want to do that? So maybe I can say if you don't like doing shots, but then PEDs probably aren't for you, considering the most efficacious way is usually through injections. But then also it depends what you're using it for, right? If you're using these compounds to heal certain injuries, most of the time it might not be on the first few layers of the skin. It might be something that's deep in the muscle, something along those lines, in which case you would have to do a injection to administer it correctly. So yeah, as far as we know, no. And I would say I don't even think it'd be that effective, because let's say you were having some sort of muscular injury and you're deep in your quad or something, rubbing some peptides on the surface layer of your skin, even if they were absorbed, I think would be way too generic of an application, where, from my understanding, most of the research says apply the peptides locally, basically in the sorest area, to basically get the best result.
Yeah. I did find, just to do our due diligence here, I've just scoped the application I use for research studies, like looking them up, which is an AI feature, which is super cool. But I did just find this study pretty much alone in vitro and vivo, which is kind of cool. But essentially, it seems like it wasn't that great compared to, like, the gel definitely led to ultimately a significant increase as far as growth hormone transdermal application, but this was only done in mice. And beyond that, it doesn't seem like it's been replicated anywhere in any sort of significant pattern. So it does seem like there is some forms of transdermal peptide therapies, but it doesn't seem like it's more effective in terms of a subcutaneous injection. So if we're looking for greatest effect, I think the best would be localized injections. it does say that the study has demonstrated some potential for the gel to have a longer and sustained release of growth hormone delivery, which is probably advantageous if you're, again, using it as a replacement therapy. But I think in our case, we sort of want to use peptides acutely and contextually, and at a much higher dose than a replacement in a sense. So,
dude, before anyone else comes up with it, I'm trademarking it right now. Growth hormone gel bath. You get a bath of growth hormone only. You sit in the bath and you get local growth all over.
Just a whole gel bath. I want. That'd be some next level shit, dude.
Order just bulk order HGH gel from China, fill it up in your bath, and just fucking multiple times a day just soak in your HGH gel.
That would be so legit.
Fuck, that sounds good.
Hi, Adam.
Hey, what's up?
There you go.
Thank you. I needed my Kindle to write notes down. I always write notes when we do these. Okay, so yeah, I think also a lot of people would start applying that to their penis in hopes for good effect. Ruben Cardenas, would you recommend keeping testosterone on a lower weekly dosing schedule while keeping your androgens such as NPP, equipoise, or masteron on a higher dosing parameter? Thank you, guys.
Depends.
I think, yeah, it depends.
My favorite answer.
Right. For me, for example, I think me and Adam are a good representation of the duality of this question. For me, I can tolerate testosterone extremely well. I can take a gram of testosterone, even upwards at times, without any form of aromatase inhibition. I have no negative outcomes as far as, blood work is willing to show. I have nothing that is immediately concerning when I take that much testosterone. However, Adam is a use case scenario where his conversion to estrogen is like aggressive as fuck. Like it's really aggressive. You're struggling to take high doses without any AI intervention. So I think for some people it's different. For me, if you're a person like me who can tolerate very high doses of testosterone without needing any extra ancillaries to apprehend estrogen, then you could probably run estrogen or testosterone at a much higher dose than the other anabolics, and that's how I would prefer it to be done. But if you're in a use case like Adam, then you're simply kind of restricted to what you can do, and therefore testosterone will likely have to be at a lower ratio to what other anabolic you use.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with that. Like, I think if you're an individual who doesn't aromatize much or can at least control your estradiol effectively without having to do a host of other drugs and their affiliated side effects, I would almost always scale testosterone for multiple reasons. One, you're more likely to be able to obtain pharmaceutical testosterone. We have a shitload more data on testosterone. I think it has probably the best safety profile. Okay, yeah. Probably that. I would say even potentially better than primobolan because of the side effects of DHT potentially. But testosterone, I would say, is also going to be most effective. And we know that, most anabolics do basically have the similar effect or similar function overall. So it's about scaling the one which, in my opinion, is going to be the safest, the least side effects for you, and is going to be the most tolerable. And for most people, that's going to be testosterone, as long as, estradiol is accounted for. So, yeah, are there use cases where you might want to scale a DHT derivative? Sure. Maybe in a contest prep scenario when you're really, really lean and you're trying to get a specific cosmetic effect, sure. But if you're not in that sort of scenario, then yeah, I would say scale the anabolic with causes you the least side effects. We touched on previously why MPP is probably something I wouldn't scale. Again, that can come with a host of side effects. Like, I don't think I've ever heard of someone run 1,000 MPP and in well. I'm sure some people have, but it results in a host of side effects. Equipoise, as we touched before, that's probably something you can scale. In my case, that is exactly what I'm doing. I'm scaling the equipoise, not the testosterone, in the hopes that I get, a less aromatizing effect and I can manage my estradiol more effectively. And then, we touched on where you might want to do a DHT derivative like masteron. So, yeah, dude, that's typically our application of it.
Yeah, it's simply just experiment, unfortunately, in this situation. If you haven't done either or, do one, see what happens, and then split test, do the other. Okay, so Slayer asks, love the lives. thoughts on GH every other day for lower side effects, or should I just suck it up, and pin every day? Total IU the same of the week.
You decide. More the better. 10 IU every day.
Yeah, no, legitimately. Yeah, I think in this case, again, you have to ask what happens endogenously and how can we create a super physiological, a super physiological, how do I say this? A super physiological representation of what's happening endogenously. And that's probably the healthiest way to go about being a bodybuilder, instead of doing something that's both super physiological and abnormal in terms of what's happening endogenously. And growth hormone isn't secreted every other day endogenously. It's secreted in a pulsatile fashion through the night and periodically through the day, but that's at special use scenarios. So I would prefer just to align with one, circadian function, which is really important, especially for sleep and function in the day. But two, just to, I guess, safety profile wise, like long term, we don't really know what happens when you modulate a circadian based hormone like growth hormone like that, where you're basically dosing it infrequently, what that might do to your body. So for me, it's going to be a daily thing. And I think for most people too, it would be beneficial for a daily thing. And I'd say if you're looking to get extreme results, you got to suck it up and pin every day. And that's just the sad story of it.
You know, well, also follow-up question, and this is just something I've been noticing that's quite common with people, especially when it comes to peptides, where they're on a pin every day. What needle are you pinning with, dude? Because many people are like, I don't pin it every day. I'm doing like a 27 gauge needle. If you're doing something water-based, like a peptide, dude, get a 31 gauge instance syringe. I don't even fucking feel it. Sometimes sometimes I'll forget, wake up like fucking at 1 a.m. or something, half asleep, sleepwalk to the fridge and like just stick it in my butt. And I don't even feel it. I have to look, it's like, where the fuck is the needle in? Because the 31 gauge is so painless, dude. You know, generally I have no issues with it doing daily administrations. Now 27 gauge, 29 gauge, you know, when I'm doing an oil-based, anabolic, yeah, okay, that's can get a bit annoying. So I can understand why daily administrations are not fun, but I still think they're the best bet, most beneficial. When it comes to peptides, dude, 31 gauge needle, you're not gonna feel shit. So if you're not really using a 31 gauge needle, try it and then thank me later.
Yeah, dude, and that's the thing. And one thing I've been really keen on doing since I've come to Thailand is using those caps. And this is unfortunately, if you have the luxury of having a pen, it's a little bit different. But the I don't even know what you call them, the needle caps that you put on top of pens. What is there, like a specific name for them?
Oh, you talk about the needle tips.
Yes, like on the top of the pens, like the growth hormone pens or the insulin pens. Like those are tiny, tiny, tiny. I've never used them before until I've come here, and I was absolutely shocked at how easy those are, because sometimes it's the same thing. I'm like, do I even get this thing in my skin? Like, I don't know if it's in or not. So yeah, I mean, I just pin every day, man. It's going to be better for you more than likely. For results, it's going to likely be better as well. You might quote people like Dorian Yates, who's doing it every other day and all this crazy shit. But again, a lot of the people who are at the highest level are exceptions and not the standard. You have to realize that no matter what they do, if you were to do it, you're likely not going to get the same effect, if any effect at all.
Yeah. Before I go on like another tangent on the topic that you just mentioned, when it comes to firstly, I think you should not copy anyone. I think you should do the research and then basically test on yourself, which is the reality of bodybuilding. But if you were to take a use case of someone, I wouldn't be looking at any top level bodybuilders. I probably wouldn't look at IFBB pros. I would be looking at someone with average to shit genetics who's managed to have a really impressive transformation, because that is probably what's going to be most efficacious. It's like before we had these great enhanced resources of people who, trained well. When I used to study hypertrophy training, I almost never, with the exception of maybe John Meadows, but even then I took a lot of stuff with a grain of salt, as you should with anyone. But most of my knowledge when it came to training came from, natural competitors, because I felt that, okay, there were less variables to control. Because if you're listening to back when there was, I'm talking about like 10, 15 years ago, when there was like, poor quality information when it came to hypertrophy training. If you're listening to, a fucking top IFBB pro who's blasting growth hormone and a bunch of other anabolics and PEDs, and they're talking about some specific nuance in training, how the fuck do you know that that's the driving variable when it came to training? So for myself, I specifically would try to find the most isolated or control variable. So natural bodybuilding guys like 3DMJ, who is a fantastic resource for training, were guys that I would pick most of this stuff for. So applying that to, pharmacology, you probably don't want to go with the genetic elite, Mr. Olympia or even IFBB Pro, because there's so many variables there. And one of the huge ones could legitimately be genetics, where they could have fucking done D-bol only and fucking grew. So look for the guy with shit genetics who made an impressive transformation. That's probably your best bet.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, with test being demonized by mainstream media, how detrimental can it be for to one's health? Is there anything to compare it to in the mainstream medias? So I think this is referring maybe to one of the videos I just published, which is a great video. If you guys haven't seen it, go fucking watch that thing on basically this mainstream channel that talked about what happens after you quit steroids, and it was just all rubbish. But the main ideas behind this, I'm assuming, are what people talk about normally when it comes to steroid use, and then what happens in reality compared to other drugs. Maybe is that sort of the question, at least the way I see it. If you want to lead off with this one, Adam, I'm going to go to the bathroom and take a leak real quick.
Yep. So with tests being demonized by mainstream media, how detrimental can be to one's health? Is there anything to compare to in the mainstream media? Okay, well, let me break it down a bit. So how detrimental can be to one's health? Well, as we well know, it completely depends on your first individual factors, as how much testosterone you're doing. If you're just taking a TRT, a true TRT dose of testosterone, let's say 75 to 150 milligrams per week, you have hypogonadism, or even if you don't, okay, and you legitimately just are taking that amount, in a prescribed fashion, the side effects are pretty much benign. And I would almost argue the side effects of low testosterone would be way more severe and detrimental to you than not supplementing with exogenous testosterone. So in that case, I would say it's actually healthier for you, okay? But if you are an enhanced bodybuilder and you're taking 2 grams of testosterone and you're not controlling your blood pressure, you're not controlling your estradiol, and you're just injecting, right? And that's all you're doing. Yeah, it's going to be quite detrimental to you. And then is there anything compared to the mainstream media? Well, the media just reports on whatever the fuck's going to get clicks. So, I mean, fuck, like if they had a story that, vitamin C was killing people, okay, or one person died from vitamin C, yeah, I'm sure there'd be like fucking a whole witch hunt on fucking ban the vitamin C because it just gets clicked. So, I mean, generally when it comes to mainstream media, I try to consume as little as possible because I personally believe there's almost no journalistic integrity these days. I believe most journalists, definitely there are exceptions, are a dime a dozen, and there's not really good ones. It's more about clicks. I just think it's a fucking horrendous source of information. So yeah, that's pretty much it, dude.
Yeah. It's really tough to compare it to something. I would compare it mostly to what the media used to say about marijuana. I don't know.
That's a good one.
Yeah, like pre legalization in lots of different countries and states in the US, the common thread was that, weed would make you a felon, like it would make you absolutely mental. It would make you hurt other people, and it would make you this belligerent, dumb, stupid person, right? Like, and yes, to some people it certainly can do that. The same thing with steroids, right? To some people, you can have emotionally charged issues, right? that are problematic. But the reality is that it's not going to be many people at all in comparison to how many people are using it, right? So the same thing is true with steroids. Is like you can see that yes, there's people who have issues with steroids. There is for sure, but there's, compared to that number of people to the actual number, millions of people who are using it, it's a small frequency. And it's just about doing things intelligently and understanding as well your predisposition to those health detriments. And that's king. Like before you get started on anything, understanding what is this going to do to me? What's already wrong with me, right? And that's, I think, where a lot of people go wrong is they don't even do testing. And one thing I think everyone should invest in before they start anything is genetic analysis, because that would let you know if you have any predispositions to cardiovascular disease or Alzheimer's, dementia, things that could actually be stimulated or agonized by using hormones. But yeah, I don't think realistically it's a big threat, honestly.
Yeah, and you actually just reminded me we should probably promote it more. So I did a 1-hour seminar at Bloodboard on things you should consider before running PEDs. If you guys message either of us, we'd be more than happy to send you the link. It's just basically a general overview of many of the things which I wish I knew before I started PEDs. Well, I did know most of it, but I feel like it doesn't get talked about a lot. We cover a lot what Cole just touched on, things from genetic testing to blood work you specifically want to do, to financial considerations, emotional considerations, all these things which I think are important tick boxes to consider if you want to go down that route.
Yeah, they're absolutely imperative. In total summary, though, I mean, it's definitely a health. It's not beneficial for your health. You know, it's not something that you would do to live the longest life possible, but it's also probably equivalent to you drinking, you know, every week. Or
I would say though, if you have hypogonadism or low testosterone, you 100% do need to replace.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like you need to. Yeah, that's
we're talking super physiological doses, but like for actual medical use cases, fuck. I think if you don't get testosterone, you're gonna be fucked.
It is much worse to be hypogonadal than it is to be even slightly super physiological, for sure. Like that's very clear in research. And I have an interesting study that I actually should share with you. I don't know why I haven't shared it with you, but there's a study where they did a group trial where they had someone take, and this is a new study, not one that's, you know, there's this one that people said a lot, but it was a group of people, men, and they had one group take 125 milligrams of testosterone, one group take 300 milligrams of testosterone, and one group take 600 milligrams of testosterone. And then they had each group be split into two different groups, where one of the groups in that subdivision took dutasteride at 1 milligram a day, and then the other group took a placebo pill. And then they tested their organs and their organ size and volume each interval, which was basically every 4 weeks for 12 weeks. And what they found was that the 600 milligram group really didn't have any differences in health from start to finish compared to the 125 milligram group. The only difference was that organ volume across the board definitely increased on everybody just when they started taking testosterone because of anabolism at large. And so, yeah, I don't think it's necessarily, even if we can have studies with 600 milligrams being used, it doesn't seem to be that detrimental. Go ahead. You were going to say something?
I was just going to say, what was their thought of having half the groups having dutasteride there? Were they just checking hair loss?
They wanted to, it's actually a really interesting study. I'm going to send it to you after this. They wanted to show how much inhibition of DHT caused anabolism within organ tissues. So what they were testing is liver and kidney volume. And it was true that dose titrations increased liver and kidney volume, but more potently, DHT inhibition caused more volume growth within those organs, which was really interesting. This is something I was researching as I was starting to look up, you know, dutasteride. So fucking crazy shit, dude, honestly. I'll send it to you because it's a really cool study.
Where was it conducted, the study?
It was done in 2018. So relatively recent.
So do you know what country?
Oh, no, I don't actually. It sounded like America.
600 milligrams of testosterone, because usually, like, it's quite hard to find research with high doses of testosterone.
Let me pull it up. It was a really cool study. I think everyone should read it. If I can find it again really quickly. Yeah, here it is. It was done in, I mean, it was published in, let's see.
I mean, it's in English, so probably the US.
Yeah, I think it was the US, man.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually it's like, at least from what I've seen, it's very hard to find those higher dosage studies because it's like outside the realm of medical use.
Yeah, it was the U.S. It was a study supported by the grants from the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development. Additionally, supported by the provider by Boston University Clinical, and then funded by Dr. Boston Claude from
Boston
the
Club.
U.S.
Boston Lloyd's old alias.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll send it to you. It's a really cool study. I think. Fuck it. I'll just share my screen so people can see it because we talked about it. So now someone's probably going to be interested in looking at it. Sorry, everybody. 1 second. So it was this study here: effects on testosterone administration and 5-alpha reduction on basically organ volume in healthy young males. And it's a really cool study because they used.
That's cool.
Sorry, weekly injections of 50, 125, 300, or 600 milligrams of testosterone in that day. And then they had
but they're doing weekly injections too. Like, I don't know. I feel like that would potentially, I don't know, okay, in this specific, what they're looking for now, I don't know if it's specifically affected, but I do feel that does skew things, especially when you're considering like aromatization and other variables.
It does. It would massively increase the peak serum concentrations for that one. Let's say that one weekly injection of 600 milligrams compared to daily injections of broken up in doses of that, the peak anabolism would be a lot higher for that one day, and that could possibly affect those organs for sure.
2.5 milligrams dutasteride daily. Fuck.
Yeah. And what they saw was through magnetic resonance imaging, which is a pretty robust way of testing, was that essentially it increased testosterone administration, increased liver volume in dose-dependent manner. And then what they didn't add, which was interesting, and you have to read through the actual study, which I wildly recommend people do with all studies because it tells you a lot more, was that the inclusion of dutasteride did show a liver volume increase. So yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, fuck, I wouldn't mind volunteering for one of those studies. 600 milligrams of testosterone.
Yeah, that sounds pretty fucking sweet, to be honest.
Sign up.
I'm in. Let's go. You don't even have to tell me what we're doing. Just give me the 600 milligrams.
Just mail it to me. I'll inject it.
Leon asks, in a fertility protocol, if a client cannot get FSH, is there any replacement? Of course.
Yes.
I mean, there's not like a 1-for-1 replacement for FSH. Like follicle stimulating hormone is follicle stimulating hormone, but there's other things that will stimulate follicle stimulating hormone, like Kispeptin 10, which is a peptide you can take through oral or injectable administration. There's things you can take. HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin. There's HMG. There's, while I don't love it, it is an option. And clomiphene, which is an oral formulation. I mean, there's lots of things you could take. What is there anything I'm missing?
You can run a bit of Clomid too. It used to be back in the day standard PCT protocols. Run a bit of Clomid too. But yeah, usually HMG, HCG is the go-to. I believe is the brand name of HMG Ovritrol. I believe it is.
I think so. Yeah, I think so because I used to get those pens. They're really fucking annoying pens because they come in a preloaded syringe.
But yeah, it works very fucking well. It's very fucking potent. So I would be looking at that. I mean, typically when it comes to fertility protocols, depending on what the client is looking for and what they've been running and what their sperm analysis as well as LSH and FSH are looking like. I usually start on like the mild end, basically just like HCG, and sort of ramp things up depending on what their blood work is showing and what their typical goals are. So I don't believe you have to go straight to like using a shitload of HMG and recombinant LSH and FSH, but so LH and FSH. But if they are if it does require that, then sure, go for it. I mean, I also think Steve has done some fantastic, he's covered everything. He's done some fantastic fertility protocol videos. I would definitely go just search Vigorous Steve on YouTube, fertility, and I'm sure he has a whole list of shit where he covers fucking every single, sort of drive or mechanism that you can go through. And that's what I would basically be going off if I'm, trying to restore fertility.
Yeah, I mean, he would have a video that's probably over an hour long, more than we could go into here, which is cited and thoroughly recorded. So it would be a really good one. Twisted Titanium asks, started Starting PEDs later in life, ? Late 40s, thoughts. And then he has some backup information. Lifted for 5.5 years. Tests tanked during the whole time. Range was, holy fucking Jesus, man. That's it's tiny. So thoughts, primary question, thoughts on starting PEDs later in life, around late 40s.
I think what we touched on previously, dude, that's 100% valid. And given you actually have very low testosterone, I think it's essential. I think you would need to be on a testosterone replacement dose at minimum. And then as far as like, if you're someone like, let's say, Paul Barnett from Anabolic Bodybuilding, if you're familiar with him, you know, he, you know, is, you know, older, okay, but he is, you know, competitively bodybuilding, doing very fucking well, and you're running a lot of gear. But his exposure was quite limited. He's checking all his health markers regularly, blood pressure, fasting glucose. He's doing his blood work. He's doing organ imaging as required. So if you take all these precautions, okay, and you don't have anything pre-existing or something which, you know, may be exacerbated by the stuff, go for it, I would say. I mean, and in your case, you know, let's define PEDs, right? In your case, I would say there's a legitimate medical usage, okay, for taking it. So for you, I would say you are almost harming yourself if you don't use testosterone replacement therapy at a minimum. If you want to take super physiological doses, then that's what we discussed, like blood work, or, you know, all the you know, prerequisites we described, and that, like, you know, that's Paul's insane transformation. Regular doctor, no help, went to try, but with expensive doctor, 200 tests per week. Then after 2 years, yes to bloods, yes to have a better. Okay, now we're not going to discuss sources here, but with this, a couple things I will say. One, there's many clinics like Marek Health, Ryze HRT, which can get you a testosterone prescription. Now, hypothetically, you could order pharmaceutical testosterone from sources online for much cheaper than that. And because you have a script for it, you're legitimately and legally allowed to use it. And it's not going to be expensive at all. It's going to be very cheap, especially if you're using just testosterone replacement dosage. In fact, a vial or ampule, you know, multiple ampules could last you a very long time. So it should be a very cheap. So please don't be going to your primary care doctor or HRT clinic who's charging you like $300 for a vial of testosterone. It really annoys me that they do that. Yes, I do understand they're a business, but they're ripping people off. And I would argue this is very important medicine for many individuals. So get your prescription, learn how to do subcutaneous or intramuscular daily injections with the insulin syringe, and order yourself some very cheap pharmaceutical testosterone from the many sources online. I mean, fuck, you can even Google it, and yeah, it would come up. I mean, there's a certain pharmacist which supplies many people. I'm sure you can figure that one out.
Yeah, there's I have a for sale a source list on the website too. If you want to grab that, it has basically all the coveted sources that we but I do think that, you know, starting PEDs at your age is not necessarily a concern as long as you do the prerequisite testing that me and Adam were just talking about. It's realistically super important that you test your lipoproteins. You know, you see what your ratios are. You test and actually get an echocardiogram, actually get an EKG, actually maybe even go as far as getting a kidney ultrasound and seeing if there's any sclerosis of or scoring of the kidney or any tissues that might be relevant, because at your age, and a colonoscopy, like getting those things done, just because it is, you know, a possible concern that just because of how old you are, not saying you're old, but just, you know, in comparison to someone who is in their 20s, you have a bit more risk just from being alive than does a 20-year-old. So getting those tests done prior to starting anything that could even further detriment any already pre-existing comorbidities would be very intelligent. And then that would be your route into using pharmacology. But it is certainly fine to do without any issues. And he says he has colon and throat checked last year, so you'd be fine. Yeah, I mean, I just, you know, start low and slow and titrate as needed, and have an intelligent cycle design with also a dietary structure in there as well. And that's, of course, where we are unfortunately going to have to plug our coaching, because I think that what we provide is so specific that it's almost guaranteed to work. And it's hard to give people advice at a granular level when it does require some degree of communication with that person. So, okay. Sup, Fit Fam. Hope my bros are doing well tonight. Thanks, man. And I don't think we're the Fit Fam. I think we're just the fucking gear fam at this point. We don't talk much about fitness. We just talk about bears.
I'm healthy, bro.
Z Salty asks, I don't feel so bad about paying $50 a milliliter for my bear preloaded test. Hearing those horror stories in Thailand. Yeah, man.
Bro, horror stories is if you walk into a fucking pharmacy and say, give me gear, and you get given some fucking Black Dragon UGL. But if you walk into a pharmacy and say, give me a Bayer Ampure, bro, I'm paying $8 for a mil. So I feel bad for you.
Yeah, straight up. Like, if you know the right people, which if you know the right, I mean, it's just like anything. If you know the right people here in Thailand, you can contact a pharmacy and they will have a carrier. Mail works very funny here in Thailand. You don't just like have a postman come by your house. You have someone hires a carrier like the old days, and they'll drive all the way across the country to deliver one thing to one person for a fixed flat rate. And so you'll have a pharmacy that will deliver a package to you in the day that you order it for, very low cost. So it's definitely not bad at all. It's very actually effective here. Yes, coaching is my next step. Hit us up, dude. Seriously, use the email in the description below or in any other of my videos, and I'll set you up with either Adam or myself. What's going on, my dudes? Not too much. I hope you're doing well, gambler. I'm down to with gear 2. Yeah. CrossFit today. Oof, dude. Not too much of a CrossFit guy. Buy in bulk. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's so far so good. One thing I actually wanted to talk about, which I think is quite interesting, is God, there's so many things we could talk about. I don't want to take a ton of time, but actually, you know what? Better yet, just get it going.
Thank you, Jay Gavin. I was gonna fucking report you.
Yeah, I was gonna tell YouTube we have a fucking stalkers of these things, get you off this platform. No, just kidding. But there's this really interesting concept that a lot of people believe in, and maybe we'll get into it next video, but it's just super funny to me that like different training modalities do something different for musculature, and it's just a whole conundrum, I guess. But okay, so just going to our last video really quick so we can capture these before we get off or move on to a different tangent. The last Roid Sage we had some potential questions on it. I shared the recipe with this. Monastras also approves. We can really start using timestamps. We'll work on the timestamps, people. Thank you very much. If anyone's willing to do it, I will reward you with.
I'm from Australia. Oh, bro, you're fucked.
Yeah. Yeah. So not many questions in this one, just a lot of replies to what we had said.
So can I read that Australia one? Sorry, could you scroll down a bit?
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
I'm from Australia, so I said my primo. What was your testing? Oh, that's good. That would have cost you a fuck ton. And results with them were, wow, so you found real primo in Australia. I might have to message this guy. Also, my E2 dropped blood work, shit crossed my E2. Well, dude, you are found a rare commodity, because I tested, like I was saying, I tested probably over 15 batches of primo, and I believe my percentage was like 90% being fake or severely underdosed. Makes your primo feel like shit, sore joints, loss of sex drive. I feel better to testosterone. Well, bro, this guy is running way too much primo. Then you're crushing your estradiol. Primo is great in the right dosage and ratio. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah. In that case, you're just gonna have to simply increase the testosterone, man. Even with 200 to 100, I mean, you might be one of those lucky people like me who can just abuse the hell out of testosterone and not have any need for an AI, which is totally fine. But then he says, but then he also says he can't feel better on test, which sucks because I can't go above 300 tests without needing an AI. So then just lower the dose.
That just means that you're really responsive to the baseline testosterone. That means all you have to do is go 300 tests, 50 milligrams maybe of primobolan, test where your estradiol is at, and then increase the testosterone, and then increase the increase the primobolan in the appropriate ratio. So I don't know, I would go 50, maybe 50 milligrams to 300, see what it is. Then maybe go 400 and 100 DHT. Go like that.
And then he was saying, okay, so here in the follow-up too, he's saying I was doing 500 milligrams of test, 200 milligrams of primo, and still had low E2 issues, and was even higher body fat when running this, like 20 to 25%. But and then I would guess, posing as a skeptic here, did you do blood work? Did you actually see that was the issue, or were you driving your conclusion based off symptomology? Because it could be something else entirely. Like it could be the solvents in the gear actually causing these issues through inflammatory pathways. Maybe it wasn't estrogen at all. I don't know.
Yeah, I can also back that up too, because gear quality in Australia is fucking horrible, and I will keep saying that. And amount of bunk, fake shit, carrier oil, shit, fucking what's it, a solution solvent they use is so high. I've had many shots where like I get like fucking test fluid information, all sorts of shit. So yeah, if you're using a UGL in Australia, Kolton's correct. There's so many different variables it could be, which is why, like, even though it's cost me an arm and a leg, like monthly blood work was almost like a must, at least of your sex hormones, because it was just that cooked. Yeah,
it could be so much more than that. I think estrogen varies so much in everyone. It does. It's like one of those things that's, again, me and Adam are the perfect dichotomy of this. It's like I can take testosterone and have zero issues, and I can even get at TRT level and then have low estrogen. Whereas Adam's the exact opposite. He can take low level testosterone and still have wildly high estrogen. It's very true. I can run super high ratio of primo, and it works really well for me. It's very interesting. I think a lot of it comes down to people's different ability. There's obviously inter-individuality in production of enzymes, and specifically the production of metabolite enzymes, right? So like the 5-alpha reductase enzyme, the aromatase enzyme, like there's different ability to produce those enzymes in people. Carboxylases, like, that change the metabolite, the metabolization rate of certain compounds that you inject. Like, everyone has different variability there. So it's also part of it is just experimentation, but that's where things get complicated. Yeah, it is super funny. Super, super funny. It's unfortunate. Oh, hold on. One more thing before we get off. Holy shit. And I got to bring this up fast because I have to get off on another call here. But this is so fucking funny.
You made me comment another one of the fucking kids running gear.
No, I wish I was, man. But there's just so much hate coming to our crew's way, as far as like, and it always has. I mean, Vigorous Steve, Paul, like all those things. We always get so much people who watch our content, which is good. And I've actually had a lot of positive response from a lot of different people in the space too, which is really cool in terms of what we're publishing. But Paul Barnett recently had someone make a reel about him. It was, well, there's two actually. There was of course, the old Vigorous Black, whatever is not Vigorous Black.
Vigorous Black.
Not Vigorous Black at all. No, we already know who he is. But there's also now, what the fuck is his name? I'm trying to figure it out. Jordan Oakley. You know who that is?
Fuck is that? No idea.
Dude, you're gonna love this character. You are gonna love this guy. Basically, he's convinced that everyone's taking grams and grams and grams of gear, and that's the only way that they look the way they do, and that the grand majority of people are just fooling everybody. Like, in fact, most people are just blasting gear. So, for example, he did one on Paul, and I'm trying to pull his accounts up here, but I think he just got banned again because I can't find his account anywhere.
Try what's that called? Internet Archive, where it's basically like historical. Yeah. So you could probably search him on there.
I think he honestly has.
Is he natural?
No. I think
Just
he got banned.
Hypo responder.
Yeah, he's just a fucking idiot, really. He got banned, dude. No way. Or his profile is just like non-existent. Yeah, I think he got banned, unfortunately. Well, he was basically saying that Paul's lying about taking 2 grams a year and that he didn't get those results taking 2 grams a year. He was taking 5 grams a year. It's like, dude, wild, bro. Wild. Like,
but
what are you talking about, bro? It's like, crazy.
Don't get me wrong. I'm sure if Paul needed to take 5, he would probably take 5 and he would be open about it. And that's what I find comments like that so stupid. Like guys like Paul, Chase, Steve, I think ourselves too, are pretty open and honest about this shit because I think it should be. I think people should be open and honest. I think the fact that Paul is taking a significant load of PEDs at his age and is healthy, at least from a blood work and health marker perspective, is awesome. It means that he's doing things correctly. He's being intelligent about it. And he's being fucking responsible. I think more people should do that because unfortunately, back in the day, you know, when there was just forums and no fucking good information, people were also taking grams, but they were not transparent about it. They were unhealthy as fuck. They didn't know what they were doing. And their health markers were fucking in the gutter. Now you get people like Steve, Paul, etc., who are educating people, being open about it. And why the fuck would they lie? I mean, that makes, you know, the difference between 2 and 5 grams, like, the fuck? Like,
yeah, it's so stupid. It's so stupid. So, like, here's his post where he's like, and I wish I could stop that. Oh, I can't. Pause. Official Jordan Oakley. I can't find his fucking profile for the life of me. So I don't know if he's like shadow banned or what's going on. But yeah, he says that there's no way he's using those doses. He's using a total of 7,840 milligrams of androgens.
But he's also like, he's just also like mad because like, where the fuck do you come up with these numbers?
I have no idea. Like 50 micrograms of T3. Like, there's no way, dude.
It's all the orals, which is hilarious. That shows me the guy knows absolutely fuck all. Because if Paul was truly taking, you know, that high dose of orals, especially with Paul's gastric issues, he'd be fucked.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
And you know what's so funny? 15 IU insulin. Like, he's such a dipshit. He thinks 15 IU insulin is a lot.
Oh,
like, what a fucking retard! Like, honestly, oh shit, I can't say the R word. what a mentally handicapped person.
It's so funny. I think what Twisted Titanium said is true. He gets banned often and just creates drama. The shitty thing is people feed into it, and they really, I think a lot of people do fucking believe it. If I'm being honest, like a lot of people believe that shit, which is scary. But all right, I have to get off, guys. I'm super sorry. I have a call that was started 3 minutes ago, and the guy's waiting in the Zoom room. So I'm gonna get off and go do that one. But I appreciate everyone's questions. Make sure if you have more that we didn't get to here, you put them down in the comment section below, and we'll get to them next week in our next Q&A, which is going to be Thursday, 8:15 p.m. CST, as we always do. Adam, do you have anything to leave with?
Yeah, guys, and also send us a DM on Instagram if you want. Probably get a personalized answer. I can't guarantee we will answer everyone, but we do try our best, and we appreciate you guys. We appreciate the questions. Keep them coming, and we will still, you know, try to give you as best feedback as we can.
Yeah, 100%. And I do have a team monitoring fucking A, man. monitoring my DMs. So people usually, if there's good questions, they'll send them over to me and let me know what's going on. So, all right, peeps, thank you so much. Have a beautiful, beautiful